Yet another rainy Saturday here in the Northeast. Soccer practice is canceled. I have time on my hands. Let's get some shop maintenance out of the way. I'm going to be working on the table saw today. Now, what are our main objectives for doing this? One is rust removal. Any fine flash rust that you might have on the cast iron surface, we want to get rid of that. The second is rust prevention in the future. And a third is to reduce the friction of parts sliding on the table saw. Now you might think, how much resistance is some dust or grime gonna give when you're pushing lumber through? And the answer is a lot. It's one of those things you don't notice until after you do it. Sort of like putting wax on the sole of your hand plane. You finally do it and you're like, this is fantastic. I should do this more often. And then you never do. Now, two things we won't be able to address with this level of maintenance is pitting, obviously way too deep in the material, and also staining. Now staining, you might think, oh, I should be able to buff this right out. Unfortunately, that's not the case. It's really in there deeper than you would think. In fact, to remove most stains from cast iron, you would have to remove so much material, they would actually dish it out. So don't sweat it. Leave it there as a badge of honor, or maybe a badge of boneheadedness because you left your coffee mug on the table saw. It's one of those things you're just gonna have to deal with. Now, to get the initial dirt and grime and surface rust off, we're going to use a Scotch-Brite pad. We're going to use the maroon. The maroon, they list as very fine. Don't let the name fool you. It's actually pretty coarse. In fact, if you rub too hard in one spot for too long, you'll very quickly see a scratch pattern emerge. And the main way we could avoid that is to use a sanding block. I make my own. I just double up some MDF, glue some cork to one side. A sanding block really ensures you're using the whole pad and you're using it evenly. When you sand with just your fingers, you'll look at the pad and you'll see the outline of your fingers because that's where all the pressure is. And all that other material isn't making as much contact as it should. And I make my sanding blocks the same width as the rolls of sticky back sandpaper that I use. Big fan of the adhesive back sandpaper. Need a little piece, just tear it off. Need a little more to put on your sanding block, no problem. You could peel some, put it on a piece of float glass or granite to flatten the backs of chisels or plane irons. Or if you want to make your own double-sided sandpaper, just peel off a piece, fold it in half, done. And thankfully our table saw is in pretty good shape. We don't need anything as aggressive as sandpaper. We'll just cut some Scotch-Brite to fit our sanding block and get to work. This is the portion of the table saw I'll be doing next. I did this portion earlier today, and you can just get an idea how easily the parts glide across. Then you bring the same piece here, and not nearly as effortless, and it just gets worse the larger the workpiece gets. All right, the first thing I'm gonna do is just dust off the top, get rid of the easy stuff. Then I'll grab my Scotch-Brite and my sanding block, and we'll follow the grain pattern of the cast iron, which runs front to back. You can give a good amount of pressure. You don't have to baby it. If you see spots that need a little bit more attention, go a little bit harder, but then feather it out so we don't leave any obvious marks. And this is one of those stains I was telling you about that you're not going to be able to get out. This was caused by, I believe, a damp piece of lumber that was left on the saw for a while. It rusted a bit. I got the rust off. You can't feel anything, but that stain, unfortunately, is there to stay. And of course, don't forget about the miter slots. All sorts of gunk can get caught up in there. So let's make sure we get it all out. After hitting it with the Scotch-Brite, I'll wipe it down again, collecting any dislodged rust, abrasive, and any fine particles of cast iron. Okay, now that our top is clean, let's treat it and protect it. I'm going to spray on a coating of 336. It's made by CRC Industrial. Horrible name, great product. I bought a gallon a few years ago, and I think I still have enough to leave my great-great-grandkids one day. Fine Woodworking did a review about 10 years ago of different rust preventatives. This came out on top. I've been using it ever since. Very happy with it. We'll spray some on, let it sit for a bit, wipe off the excess, then we'll apply a coating of paste wax. Last thing, we'll put on a coating of paste wax, let it haze over, then we'll buff it off. This we're doing to make the table nice and slippery. This is for rust prevention. Wax really isn't a great rust preventative, so that's why I like using the combination of both. And I'm almost out of my Johnson's paste wax. They don't make this stuff anymore. This stuff has been around forever, including this can. So after I shoot this video, I'll start scouring the countryside for a replacement product. Or just order something off Amazon. And once it hazes over, we'll buff it off. And that's it. A few minutes of elbow grease, and we have a surface that is protected against rust, and it's going to be a lot more pleasurable to work on. Now for maintenance, just repeat this 4 to 5 times a week. Just kidding. Every few months, your cast iron will look great, and you'll enjoy your time in the shop that much more. Until the next video, thanks as always. See you next time.